I just know number go up. Like it will over time gain in purchasing power because it's the best money we've ever had. It's the best store of value we've ever had. And it's like a giant vacuum that over time will suck the value out of these lesser store of value assets.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Blockware Intelligence Podcast. This week I have on Cory from Swan. Cory, welcome.
That's supposed to be a swan of some sort. I don't know. Anyway,
I love it.
Good to be here, Joe. I've never done a pod with you before, I don't think. So glad to get to hang out for almost an hour.
Yeah.
50 minutes, 30 minutes. I don't know. Cut me off when I start to get redundant and stupid.
Sounds good. Yeah. We'll just play it by ear and have a good convo. I wanted to start out in August of this year. You were basically featured in a New York Times article about Bitcoin maximalism being this segment of the community that just kind of is relentlessly buying Bitcoin even after the price crash. I'm curious to know, why do you think traditional media outlets get stuck on blockchain and crypto broadly and kind of fail to recognize the importance of Bitcoin? This was kind of a turn in events from traditional media.
Yeah, it's true. So we set out at the beginning of the year to just every single media appearance for everyone at Swan and associated with Swan to just hammer home the Bitcoin, not crypto message. And just to be very, very clear that there's one of these things out here that is the original, that's doing exactly what it was supposed to do for the last 13 years. And it's the only one that's going to be around in the long term. We, did research on it. I did the research with Sam, who leads, he's our lead analyst for Swan Private. And we wrote an article about, just pointing out that none of these cryptos gain against Bitcoin over time. They all bleed out, literally every single one of them. Never reach new all-time highs in Bitcoin terms, 3 or more years later. And, just pointing that out and stopping every interview, even if I was on CNBC or Yahoo Finance or, CoinDesk or whatever live, if they referred to Bitcoin, as crypto, I would stop the conversation in its tracks and go back and tease it apart. And, if I had to use 45 seconds of my 3 minutes on that, so be it. But we just kept on hammering it all year long. And I think it started to finally get through people's heads that Bitcoin is different. Obviously lots of people have figured this out, and it wasn't just us, it's a million people kind of making that point on Twitter every day and, saying the same thing. It's just kind of, it was very strategic on our part to make that our message, at least this year. And yeah, I think with the Barron's feature at the beginning of July and then the New York Times feature at the beginning of August, and frankly, both on the backs of the Luna blow up and the Celsius blow up, both of which I was very vocal about and telling people that was going to happen. In Luna's case, 2 months before it happened, and Celsius' case, a month before it happened. I think that was a big reason that there was a lot of media interest in us.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Why do you think it has taken so long? Bitcoin's been around since 2009, and, media still gets stuck on Luna, crypto, all of this other stuff. And now, as you made a great point, the Luna blow up, the Celsius blow up has pushed a lot of the media outlets to actually consider the idea of Bitcoin maximalism. But why do you think it's taken this long?
Yeah. So it's always a new wave, right? The first one was ICOs, and is this something novel and interesting and special that disrupts everything? And that was that was a little bit more of a distributed push, because there were lots of people doing ICOs all over the place, and there wasn't necessarily one villain or a handful of villains that you could point to that were scamming everybody. And also just kind of a little bit less understood. There wasn't nearly as much Bitcoin signal in the market. Stefan Livera's podcast wasn't out. Marty's was just starting. There was no Brady Swenson. Safe's book wasn't out. Jan's book wasn't out. All this stuff is 2018, 2019 vintage that we have this wealth of information about Bitcoin. All we had was, Nathaniel Popper's book, Digital Gold from 2014, or if you were lucky enough to have somebody point you to Nakamoto Institute or Lop's page, and, up through about 2018, that's all you kind of had. Or maybe like I did, was lucky enough to meet Jimmy and find his YouTube channel, and then get into Andreas. And it was just way harder to find the stuff. But, now that it's very clear that there's, a Bitcoin only industry and that you can make money and be profitable in Bitcoin media and Bitcoin conferences and Bitcoin companies, there's way more budget and incentive for creating that signal in the noise. And so all of these sort of obvious scams don't really stand as much of a chance of gaining a lot of traction like the ICOs did. So now we're dealing with a new beast. And this is actually the fact that there's probably never been an industry vertical better suited to the venture capital business than crypto scamming. At this moment in time, they're able to get away with saying whatever they want about these things, like this crypto bullshit, whatever is going to save the world. This blockchain thing is going to just disrupt everything. They can say literally whatever they want, while also taking advantage of being able to sell the thing to retail. So, and being able to dump it, right? So you can pump it however you want because it's not a security, and you can dump it however you want because it's not a security. And these things, are not doing and won't do what they claim to, Helium being a good example, Axie being a good example, and basically the distortion is because they're able to still make money even without product market fit, even without revenue, without any of these things succeeding in the least. The venture firms still, these funds still have positive returns because they're pumping and dumping. That's where all the noise and all the confusion comes from. So it's really Andreessen Horowitz and Paradigm and these venture funds that have deployed $40 billion over the last 2 years into crypto scams. And then obviously they have big staffs with media, with PR, with relationships in San Francisco and in New York, talking to journalists constantly. So there's just way, way, way more money behind the crypto scam machine. And Andreessen has their own Future, which is their media arm, which pumps these things out. And you've got Laura Shen and all the, bandwidth that she gives to all these scammers, and Pomp putting scammers on his show until recently and stuff like that. So, I think it's just, it's really just follow the money. There's a moment in time here where there's information arbitrage and regulatory arbitrage and a money-making opportunity. And that $40 billion is going into confusing mainstream media about crypto.
Yeah, I think you made a good point about how a lot of venture capital money has flowed into crypto broadly. And I think it kind of shows the general misallocation of capital that we've seen in a perpetual until, beginning of this year or late last year, negative interest rate environment where money is free. People are throwing money at pretty much anything that walks or can get users. And now it's like we have this, crypto thing where people can pump in $1 billion, sell it to someone else for $10 billion, and then move on.
Yep. Yeah. So that's what's been happening the last couple of years, 2-3 years.
Definitely. Also, I think you made it.
This too shall pass. Yeah. Bitcoin will still be here, and it'll be bigger, and more people will understand it, and we will continue our march into the bright orange future, which is, 8 billion people having sound money and being able to transact with each other using the price signal that is unadulterated by third parties and manipulation.
Yeah, exactly. I also think you made an interesting point about how the education back in before 2017 was basically just non-existent. I remember getting into crypto in 2017 and discovering the Nakamoto Institute from Pierre. And I was reading it and I was like, wow, this makes a lot of sense, but it's just some random ugly website on the internet. How could this be right? And I tried to learn how could Bitcoin, not work. And I couldn't find a decent answer. And I was like, maybe I'll, buy some of this.
No, good on you. I wasn't fortunate enough. I wasted 11 months in the hinterlands of crypto exploration and friction tokens and ICOs before the signal for me was meeting Jemmy and then getting turned on to his YouTube show. And then from there, Andreas, and then finally, just finding some of the Lops page. Interestingly, that I'm trying to remember what the the guy that does Libitcoin, is that Voskuil? I forget.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so he has just like incredible compendium that's like a Wikipedia of every single threat to Bitcoin and why it's not a threat. And I remember just going through every single one of those, and I was like, damn, things pretty well thought through, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So when someone comes to you talking about, Bitcoin, and they're like, hey, should I buy Bitcoin or ETH? And obviously you say Bitcoin. Why do you say not buy ETH? Like, what's your general answer to someone that doesn't know much about it?
I mean, basically it's just, you're playing a greater fool game because it can't do what it purports to do, and it can't do what it aims to do. It's broken and also just like completely restarted right now. And you'll lose in Bitcoin terms over the long term, holding ETH instead of Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is money and ETH is not. So it just doesn't really make any sense. If you're a trader and you're a really good trader, maybe you can trade swings or something like that, or, run some bots and some black boxes and participate in the casino. That's fine if that's your thing, but, it's not a good investment.
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on how post-merge over at this point now, 51% or more of the blocks have been OFAC compliant blocks? Any thoughts on that?
I mean, it's just a symptom of overall centralization. It is at a starting point that was obviously significantly more centralized than Bitcoin, but also now on proof of stake, it's inherently centralizing over time. There's no way to stop it will just get more and more political over time if you're on proof of stake. Like, that's just inherently how that system is designed. So, I mean, it was doomed as a proof of work protocol because we humans only need one proof of work protocol, and it was doomed as soon as it moved on to proof of stake, because proof of stake is just more fiat, it's more politics. So there's really like no room to operate for this thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, I think Bitcoin was basically the invention of immutable, verifiable scarcity, and ETH and all of the other cryptos are clearly not immutable. And if they claim to be immutable, they're not as immutable as Bitcoin. And I think, money or economic systems converge on one monetary good. And I think that's, clearly Bitcoin is, in my opinion, the best monetary good we've ever seen.
Yep. Yeah, it clearly has the best properties to be money of anything that we have, and frankly, anything that we can conceive of, which is really interesting. Like, it's very difficult to conceive of something that could be better on the things. It is kind of perfect money for humans on this planet. And so that gives me plenty of confidence helping people get into Bitcoin, enthusiastically suggesting that they do so, and putting my own money where my mouth is.
Yeah.
Being, heavy on the coin.
Yeah. Do you have thoughts on like how Bitcoin could be better? I'm curious to know that.
Not really on base layer. I think we just have to be patient. I think a lot of people make the mistake of looking at like technology adoption curves and comparing it to like social media or iPads or something like that. And this is much, much bigger. Carlotta Perez wrote a book in 2002, I think, called Technological Revolutions in Financial Capital, and kind of the interplay between the two. And the big revolutions change every industry. Bitcoin is going to change every industry. As you sort of try to think of what's going to happen with layers above Bitcoin, Lightning, medium of exchange, having machines talk to each other, streaming money. This stuff is all from like 2015 Andreas videos. Like this stuff has all been thought through. We don't need to be, but there will be a lot invented that we can't even really think of today. Just like it would be hard to imagine the things that we do on layer 8 of the internet above layer 1 internet protocol today, right? It's hard to imagine these things until you see them. So we'll just keep on building. This thing's going to take, 40 to 80 years, like every other major cycle, whether it's the Industrial Revolution or the Information Revolution or steam power, or, whatever the ones that came before. They take a long time to play out. This is going to take a long time to play out.
Yeah. I want to talk about your company, Swan, a little bit. I know you guys, or you've tweeted before that you have intentions on going public on NASDAQ. I guess and it is unique that you guys are a Bitcoin only company that wants to go public. Why do you want to go public? And after you go public, do you have confidence that you'll be able to maintain that Bitcoin focused ethos?
Oh yeah. So first off, I mean, being Bitcoin only is very greedy. It's like the most capitalist thing you can possibly do. There's a strong economic rationale for being Bitcoin only. You have a much better team, obviously, because you have people that actually give a shit instead of a bunch of mercenaries. And so you get their 24/7 thinking time, right? They're out walking their dog or they're taking care of their kid, for better or worse. Like they're usually thinking about Bitcoin and how they can get something done using Swan as a vehicle to further the cause that they're on. So, this is 80 people across 5 continents, and, we basically hire from Twitter for the most part. So it's all missionaries who have proof of work and we know are completely down for the cause. And the few people that have snuck in by pretending, they just don't last. It becomes very obvious very quickly, and they just don't do their job well, and nobody can really work with them because they don't care. And I think there's only been 2 or 3 of those in the last 3 years. And it just doesn't make sense to hire anyone except for Bitcoiners for this company. Your attack surface is dramatically smaller. Your technical complexity when you're only dealing with Bitcoin is way less. Your fraud risk when you are not dealing with all these, smart contracts and hacks and all this other crap that everybody else has to deal with. You just don't have to worry about that stuff. You don't have to I was laughing when we set up Swan Private Client Services in early 2021. And the reason we did it, this is actually giving, some of the top smartest Bitcoiners in the world as your sales contact for high net worth people and companies around the world. And we were like, wait, why hasn't somebody done this before? And then we realized, oh, the crypto casinos, they can't do it because, one, obviously their compliance department won't let them because you'd have to be a registered rep because this is all gray area, probably securities that you're repping. But two, no one can be eloquent on 100 cryptos. No one can go deep on 100 of these things that switch out all the time, right? So you're not going to be able to be smart about talking about it. And three, and probably most importantly, the salesperson has to lie. If you want to sell Cardano, you have to lie. If you want to sell Link, you have to lie. You have to literally lie and pretend that the Oracle problem has been solved in computer science. It literally has not. You have to lie and you have to learn all this crap. You have to go deep and learn about the spurge, the purge, the merge, the dirge, the whatever, what are all the rhyming juvenile, badger dance type engineers have come up with. It's just a disgusting job to have to sell crypto, and nobody wants to do that job.
Yeah. With that said, though,
it creates all this opportunity. You go through the aperture that appears to be a narrowing, and out the other side comes immense creativity. And you realize if you want to sell Bitcoin better than anybody else, you have to sell it to individuals. You have to sell it to businesses. You have to sell it to trusts. You have to sell it in 401ks and IRAs. You have to sell it with recurring purchases. You have to sell it with large one-time purchases. You have to think about funding via debit, credit, ACH, wire, all these different ways. When you multiply those factors out, you're selling Bitcoin literally thousands of different ways when you combine all the different ways that you're selling it, how you're packaging it, who you're selling it to, and what the funding method is. And then think about the full life cycle. Well, how are they custodying it? Are they doing self-custody? Are they doing multi-sig? Are they leaving it with you? All these different ways. So there's so many different paths into Bitcoin, and helping people along the customer journey and optimizing that, helping them do it the best way possible that's good for Bitcoin and good for them. That's a very complex business.
Yeah. In regards to selling crypto, ironically, there are still people that, promote things like Cardano and XRP that are just clearly, not long-term investments, or they're basically bag holders that are looking to sell it for more dollars or more Bitcoin in the long run. Do you think the people that are promoting it, are they actually lying, like you said, or are they they don't understand necessarily what they're promoting?
It doesn't really matter. Classical ethics, right? So it doesn't matter whether because I can never know whether you believe it or not. I mean, some people you can obviously call a scammer because it's just obvious from listening to them talk, like Do Kwon or Mashinsky. Those guys are, red flags every time they open their mouths. But the rest of them, so you think of like the Kyle Samanis or the Ari Pauls, like Ari seems to me like he might believe some of this stuff. You know, that's the block tower guy. Kyle Samani clearly doesn't believe some of the shit that he says, and he just says it because he's playing a role and he's just collecting AUM and, you know, whatever, make it his money. So I think he actively, deliberately lies regularly, but I wouldn't necessarily say like every single crypto fund manager is deliberately lying. I think some of them actually think something is going on. And they're just mistaken. But again, the classical ethics thing is like, it doesn't matter what you think. What matters is like what you do. This is like, you have no way to prove that the bridge was constructed well. So if you're the engineer of the bridge, you and your family get to live under the bridge for 2 years after you finish constructing the bridge. That's how they handled that. And then you're like trying really hard to make sure that bridge doesn't collapse, right? You know, another one of my favorite examples of this is in the movie Casino, Scorsese movie. So you know, the casino boss is De Niro, and he's been stuck with this one employee as the manager of the slots area in his casino because he's like the son of a legislator or something. And the same machine delivers 3 jackpots in the same afternoon. And De Niro finds out about this and like rushes down to the floor and, you know, is just haranguing the guy and saying like, obviously you should have pulled the machine at the second jackpot. Like, how could you possibly leave this? Obviously you're being scammed. And, you know, basically the punchline is he says, you know, either you're too stupid to know or you're in on it. Either way, you're fucking fired. And that's how I feel about people like Vitalik. It's like, I don't really care what you believe your intentions are. You're either fucking in on it or you're too fucking stupid. And he proves his stupidity often when he talks about Bitcoin and talks about, you know, scalability and talks about security and all these different things. Like, he has things dramatically wrong, even though he took a lot of time to learn Mandarin and talks like a computer. Like, he's still fucking wrong. And I don't give a shit whether he has good intentions or not.
Yeah. Let's switch the convo back to Bitcoin, I guess, on a more positive note. So your company has this mission to create 10 million Bitcoiners, and I think there's basically a story behind this that I didn't know until I saw that you or someone else posted it on Twitter the other day. Why do you have a mission to bring or to make 10 million Bitcoiners?
Yeah, so this was actually the mission statement of the company. I wrote it back in February of 2020, a month before we launched. And 10 million Bitcoiners is the number that you need in the United States to get to an intransigent minority, which in populations generally is like 3 to 4% of the population. So like in the UK, when they got to like 3 or 4% of the population demanding halal meat, then that flips everything to being halal. And basically it's because the 97% don't really care. It's not that big a deal to them, but it's a huge deal to that intransigent minority that absolutely must have the meat prepared a certain way. Similarly, in Bitcoin here in the United States, which is the only entity, the only organizing countervailing force contra Bitcoin that can matter in the next century, is the United States government. There's literally no other entity on earth that can coordinate anything that would really make life difficult for Bitcoin and Bitcoiners. And Bitcoin's still going to win in the long run, regardless. Like, this will be global money no matter how long it takes. That's just kind of game theoretically how it's going to end up. But life could be awesome for Bitcoiners in 2040, or it could really fucking suck, and it might not be a fun life for Bitcoiners until like 2100. And so this is this concept that I talk about a lot of the race versus the war, where if you win the adoption race, you don't ever have to fight the war. So all these people that are, you know, working on, like Will Cole working on his mother-in-law, and, you know, all these people with the new Bitcoin only political organizations, recognizing that the coin centers and the blockchain associations of the world don't have their best interests at heart, and we had to create our own organizations. So they're trying to change government from the inside. But the easiest thing to do, in my view, and the goal that's right there in front of us, is getting 10 million people in the United States to own a decent chunk of Bitcoin in their net worth and actually understand it to the point where they actually think it's the right thing. It's the best thing for America and the world, right? because they will show up at town halls and they will do canvassing campaigns, and they'll make life difficult. They'll be that single issue voter. They'll make life difficult for the politicians that want to attack Bitcoin. And so that's that intransigent minority that we need. And, you know, I don't know where we are. I think we're probably somewhere between like 100,000 and 200,000 right now that I would consider like solid Bitcoiners in the US that have a good chunk of their net worth in Bitcoin and understand it deeply. So my guess is we need somewhere between like a 50 and 100x to ensure that we won't go to war with the United States government. Michael Saylor has a new speech that he gave at the Atlas Gala here in LA a couple weeks ago. And he basically came down to, he seems to have reached the same conclusion. I've been tweeting about the race versus the war for a long time, but he basically says, like, you don't want to be a martyr. You want to be a winner. And that's what this is about. Like, avoid the war. Don't be a martyr. I want my kids to enjoy a Bitcoinized future. I want to see hyper Bitcoinization. I want to see Bitcoin as a widely used store of value, medium of exchange, and unit of account. And I think all of that is doable by 2035 if we, you know, buckle up and stop wasting time on crypto scams. And so, you know, I'm writing a piece on this right now. Actually started it last night, finally. Been meaning to for a while. And, you know, it's basically every little bit in favor of Bitcoin helps, and everything contra Bitcoin hurts and delays adoption, slows us down in this race, and makes the possibility of us having to fight a war and getting really nasty like more likely. So this is kind of unpacking what I may just toss out and tweet and say something like, you know, Chris Dixon is an enemy of human freedom, right? But he actually is. He may not realize it, and his friends that he, you know, has cocktails with in Silicon Valley may not realize it. But, you know, again, he's either in on it, which is clearly he's in on it, or too stupid. He may be both. Like, he's obviously a smart guy, but he's in on it. He's got these financial incentives to push all these crypto scams and claim that they're doing something, like Axie and Helium, you know, classic Andreessen pump and dumps. And, you know, and he doesn't realize or doesn't care because of his just greedy, doesn't care what he's doing to delay the onset of greater human freedom and prosperity, which will come sort of with the surety that Bitcoin has won this race, and that that Bitcoiners will never be fucked with on a grand scale by the US government and anyone else joining that sort of like contra Bitcoin coalition.
Yeah. For the 10 million Bitcoiners specifically, I'm curious to know, like, how exactly would you define a Bitcoiner, right? Do they have to have a like certain percentage of their net worth or their portfolio in Bitcoin? Do they have to run a full node and verify their UTXOs? Do they have to hold their own private keys? Like, what's the, you know, requirement?
Yeah, for me, I'm trying to define a Bitcoiner that's going to be part of that intransigent minority that's going to try to, you know, make it, the race is won once you get there, basically, and you won't have a war. So that's specifically how I'm defining it. So a Bitcoiner that's part of that 10 million intransigent minority in the US, that's going to be somebody that has, I think, just two things, like a good chunk of their net worth in Bitcoin that's meaningful to them, and a deep understanding of Bitcoin and appreciation for it. That's it.
Yeah.
You know, like somebody's definition may, you know, well, understanding means you have to run your own node and you have to like do all these other things. But, you know, in my view, I just want them to be, you know, a combatant on the side, a ready and willing combatant. Hopefully we never have to fight, but they would be ready to fight. By the way, sorry, I didn't finish your question about going public, but I think this is a nice add-on here. I personally have no ambitions whatsoever to be a public company CEO. I hear it absolutely sucks. Like, you basically just spend all your time in like board meetings and shareholder actions and compliance, and like it seriously sucks and people regret it. And I'm aware of that. And hopefully I can like take the thing public and then be executive chairman and find a CEO or something. That'd be my goal. But I think it's really important just because of what that means to the market to prove that a Bitcoin only company can do that. And then I also think from a branding perspective, having people around the world being able to own a piece of the company, to know that we're, regulated, whatever, and audited, all those kinds of things, have analysts talking about you, just way easier for all your executives and board members to get on TV all the time talking about Bitcoin. And we're just going to be carrying this pure Bitcoin message. So I think I think there's probably if you're just talking about in revenue terms, I think after going public, I think there's an easy 5 to 10x revenue bump over the next couple of years, attributable to being public.
Yeah, I guess going public would be a great marketing opportunity in of itself for Swan.
That's how I see it, for Swan and for Bitcoin. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I guess going off that, do you have a timeline that you want to go public by, or is it just kind of when the opportunity presents itself, you'll be ready?
Yeah, it's a bit of both. I mean, I think we'll be ready in 2 years, and then it'll be timing. So there's always an IPO window, and then it closes. So sometime after 2 years when the window's open.
No, that makes sense. I'm curious, how has Swan performed during the bear market? I imagine many of your users that have, been on the platform or they were introduced have been sticking on it, and they're DCAing, but I would also imagine that maybe new user growth has slowed. I'm sure you don't want to dive into super detailed statistics.
No, it's fine. I mean, general broad strokes is fine. I mean, in general, what's the 2x2? So if market pumps, we gain tons of users and tons of revenue. If the market dumps, then so user growth basically slows or stops when the market dumps, but you also make a shit ton of revenue, because in our case, it's people that signed up for a service with no sell button. So they generally see sats on sale and they go nuts. The only thing that kind of sucks is when it just goes sideways forever. That's when volumes are low and user growth is sideways, or just kind of incremental inching up kind of thing. I think we have maniacs as customers that just never stop buying for the most part. So there's always that kind of I think it's 70 to 75% of our customers are on recurring purchase plans, and they never turn off and almost never leave. And so that number tends to just go up over time, the number of people that are on recurring purchase plans, but it definitely accelerates when there's a bull market.
Yeah, no, it seems fairly logical. How do you, I guess, approach Bitcoin currently, given the really tough macro backdrop? When someone comes to you and says, "Hey, I thought Bitcoin was this superior inflation hedge, and it's down, 75% from its all-time high," what do you say to them?
Yeah, I mean, I just honestly, Steven Lubka, who runs Swan Private, did such a good job explaining, the two different types of inflation, and that, the original definition was about monetary inflation, which makes sense. We talk about debasement, that was literally debasing the coins and shaving metal off the coin. And the coin gets smaller over time. As you look at the Roman coins, over 500 years or something, that's debasement. And inflation is just printing more of these things, right? So there's more money in circulation. And, Bitcoin, as I always understood it, and I was never one of those people that promoted it as an inflation hedge, frankly, me personally, I wasn't out there banging the drum and saying "Oh no, you guys are fucking wrong." I'm not an asshole, but it wasn't something that I ever talked about. I always understood it as a hedge against the entire fiat system, and something that we're moving over to, and essentially as a hedge against the literal inflation of the money supply, not against some CPI metric. It's way too volatile to think about it in short terms, and I always rejected any sort of analysis about its close correlation with the Qs over some short time frame. It's dude, just zoom out. This thing is 13 years old. It's been in kind of 4-year cycles for the last 8 years or something, and 2-year cycles before that. And, we have no idea how long this thing is going to take over time. I just know number go up. It will over time gain in purchasing power, because it's the best money we've ever had. It's the best store of value we've ever had. And it's a giant vacuum that over time will suck the value out of these lesser store of value assets.
Yeah, it's interesting because kind of like you said at the beginning, there wasn't much education for Bitcoin up until maybe like 2017 or 2018, but yet Bitcoin, the asset, still accrued a very significant amount of value. So do you think there's an argument to say that, hey, maybe there's this decent portion of Bitcoin held by Bitcoiners in the world, or not necessarily Bitcoiners, but people that hold Bitcoin that may not fully even understand what they hold, like if they hold 1,000 Bitcoin or something like that?
I find that to be pretty rare, because once something becomes pretty valuable, you usually it's pro-cyclical. You learn more and then you hold more, and that makes you want to learn more. So, even friends of mine that, were traders or hedge fund guys, and just, somebody told them to grab 5,000 coins in 2013 or something like that, like they know a lot more about Bitcoin now than they used to, like way more, because it's a significant part of their financial holdings at this point in most cases.
I think that makes sense. So going back real quick to your goal of Swan's mission of getting 10 million Bitcoiners, what would you say to people that may think, hey, Bitcoiners are too toxic? What's your argument to say, like, hey, like, yes, Bitcoiners are toxic, but it's helping get the 10 million Bitcoiners? Like, people might think toxicity would mean less than 10 million Bitcoiners, and I would imagine you would argue the opposite of that.
I mean, I muted all 4 people that talk regularly about Bitcoiners being toxic, and then it's just like not a thing anymore. Like it's such a just obvious ploy to get attention for those people to, use some epithet that Vitalik came up with and lob it over against Bitcoiners. It's just like, it's so dumb. It was always such a dumb conversation. So I just ignore it.
Yeah, it's fair. It is funny
I'm a
how
Bitcoiner, and like, I just, it's just stupid.
Yeah, definitely. I remember like in 2018, I feel like I don't know, I guess it started out originally with Vitalik calling Bitcoiners Bitcoin Maximalists as an insult. And then in like 2018 and 2017, Bitcoiners kind of like embraced it, and they were like, yes, we're Bitcoin Maximalists. And it was kind of
Samson
funny.
made those dope hats.
Yeah.
The toxic Bitcoin Maximalist hats with the hazmat logo.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
Listen, like any epithet, like if a community that's being targeted wants to co-opt it and own it and just have fun with it, like it's totally within their right to do it. And I don't really give a shit if another Bitcoiner wants to call me a maximalist, but I'll stop the interview if I'm on a crypto podcast or a mainstream interview, and I'll explain that's, maxi is a diminutive of an epithet, and it means you don't know what's going on here. So let's talk about it.
Yeah. No, it's just the history of the term is just kind of funny.
Yeah.
In the Bitcoin world.
Yep. I mean, what I generally find is these guys have debate backgrounds, and they're good at creating straw men and pretending that there is a type of person that doesn't actually exist, or a position that nobody actually takes, and claiming that that's a position that's actually widely held. And it's just complete mental masturbation on their parts. And maybe it gets, I mean, I can name them, like maybe it gets Udi some blockchain consulting revenue or something like that, or, helps Eric gain some AUM for his crypto fund. But like, these are not people, I was disappointed to see Eric follow suit this year. Udi was always like that. Eric Wall, has contributed quite a lot, frankly, to Bitcoin thought. And I think this was just an unfortunate sidetrack. But, once he's done with it and wants to come back, I would say, has generally been a genuine participant until this year. But Udi, I just don't have any time for it all.
Yeah. Yeah. Another, I guess, thought leader, quote unquote, in the Bitcoin industry that I liked was Trace Mayer. I think he made like a lot of great videos back when he was, actually a full Bitcoiner.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. He did his exit scam for whatever reason. I don't know. It's a shame.
Yeah.
I like the way he talked about things. Yeah, go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, I heard Caitlin Long was on a podcast like maybe a week or so ago, and she mentioned that she had talked to Trace recently about Bitcoin and stuff, and I thought that was interesting because he definitely has gone dark. So I wonder what he's up to. Trace, if you're out there, come on the podcast. I'll talk to you.
Come on the pod, yeah. Yeah, I mean, listen, man. There are so many voices out there now that you don't need to listen to people whose views are adulterated by bullshit, right? Like, I don't need to point people toward Andreas anymore, because there's plenty of people out there that aren't confused and who actually do understand money and economics to a degree much greater than he does, even though he's a fucking genius and I love his videos and it was instrumental to like my understanding of Bitcoin. And I remember certain videos of his. I used to listen to the YouTube videos more than watch them. And I remember what street I was on and where I was walking, or whether I was with one of my daughters, and like when that point was made by Andreas, and I sent my parents to go see him live, and like all this stuff. But it's like, at the end of the day, if you're also saying there's going to be 10,000 of these tokens and some girl in some village can like create a token that's going to get used as money in her region of a continent, it's like, dude, you don't understand this shit. Like, you have massive gaps in your understanding here. And, you know, I think, yeah, I mean, the same goes for quite a few people who were at one point the best we had, but now we have better. Like Roger Ver used to be one of the best advocates for Bitcoin, but he didn't really understand it, you know, and Andreas doesn't fully understand it. And I'm not saying that I do, but I can point to some things that they get dramatically wrong about Bitcoin.
Yeah. Yeah. Bitcoin does have this habit, or the Bitcoin community does have this habit of killing their thought leaders and transitioning to new ones that, you know, some argue are better, some argue are worse, but it is interesting how that continues to happen. I think, again, that's kind of a feature of the community out. You know, there's not really a clear leader. I think that's kind of the
100%. And yeah, and some of the best people that really do know it through and through, they get tired. So they don't want to be in the Twitter fights. And so then you're sending your B team, you know, and, you know, everyone on the crypto side is on the B team by definition, but they're going up against the B team on the Bitcoin side because the other guys are kind of retired. They're tired of it, you know? Yeah. So you're not getting Jimmy and Jameson on every single fucking thread.
Yeah.
If you did, you just get stomped out like Michael Jordan in an 8th grade game. Like, you just get crushed every single time. But, you know, people like to argue with somebody today.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it kind of goes back to the idea that a lot of the setbacks or like critiques of Bitcoin were answered on like the Bitcoin Talk forum back in like 2011.
So long ago. Yeah. You can just go back and, you know, you read like, you know, VJ from 2018 or Beauty On from like 2011 or whenever his, you know, some of his first stuff. Like, there's so many good things that Hal and Satoshi said, just like answer the questions on first principles and explain how this shit is going to play out. And it has exactly done that in so many ways.
Yeah, exactly. And those guys that I guess understood it or somewhat understood it back then have, you know, thousands of BTC, so they're not on Bitcoin Twitter arguing with each other.
Listen, we're going to, in 2026, we're going to be talking about people that have tens of BTCs as being filthy rich. And like, you know, another 4 to 8 years after that, it's going to be like anyone with a Bitcoin, you know, it's just going to be, yeah, it's just going to be more and more scarce as compared to the number of humans that want some.
Yeah. Exponential scarcity is a wild invention, and we're watching it play out in real time. So it's definitely exciting. I know you're hosting the Pacific Bitcoin Conference. Tell people like what it is and why should our audience listening right now sign up and go to it.
All right. So first off, pacificbitcoin.com, go get your tickets. You can use the code Cory for 20% off. So this is the largest Bitcoin conference on the West Coast. It's in Los Angeles. We're putting it on at an airplane hangar at the Santa Monica Airport, the Barker Hangar, which is an amazing venue. It's a real airplane hangar, but they also do like MTV Movie Awards and Nickelodeon Kids Choice and stuff. So it's like really well set up for being able to do big events. A ton of the top Bitcoiners are speaking and will be around. So Saylor and Lynn and Fossey and Lavera and Natalie Brunell and, you know, on and on and on. It's just a huge speaker list. You can check that out. There's a bunch of side events. There's a beefsteak. If you buy the VIP ticket, we've got a huge VIP party on Thursday night and then a wrap party on Saturday at this crazy beach house mansion. So that should be fun. Yeah, I mean, it's just a celebration of Bitcoin. There'll be a lot of learning. There'll be a lot of fun, amazing opportunities to connect with other Bitcoiners, a lot of the top companies obviously coming, many of them sponsoring, which is awesome, or at least their founders speaking. And we're going to do this every year in the fall in Los Angeles. It is Bitcoin only. There are no crypto speakers and no crypto sponsors, so only pure Bitcoin signal. So, this is obviously a pretty large gathering of Bitcoiners. We're bringing back the Swan Dome, which a lot of people loved at the Bitcoin conference in Miami in 2021. So we're constructing a Swan Dome. That's the second stage, and that will be much more sort of like insider, a little bit more technical, kind of like more like industry and hardcore Bitcoiner chat on that stage. And then we have a third stage that is the Magic Money Court, and that's actually a basketball court. And yes, there will be a 3-on-3 tournament featuring 16 teams of Bitcoiners, the Bitcoin Classic. Their first edition was at Rucker Park in New York. The second one is at the Pacific Bitcoin Conference. And there'll be DJs and live performances. It should be pretty fun. So yeah, excited for that. It's Thursday and Friday, November 10th and 11th. The 11th is a national holiday, so you only have to take one day off of work. And if you haven't been out here in a while, this is a great opportunity to do it. Come see some friends in LA, come hang with some Bitcoiners. Was that good enough? Was that a good shill? Do you think we good?
I think that was good. Are you going to be in the 3-on-3 basketball tournament or no?
Yeah, I probably will just let everybody else play. I will probably participate in the 3-point competition, but I don't plan to be super sweaty and to be hobbled with an injury during the conference. I've got some other things to do that week. But yeah, it pains me. There's still a 10% chance that I'll join one of the Swan teams. We're putting 2 teams in.
Nice.
Yeah. If people don't know, they'll be surprised if you come out. There's I don't know, I think probably 20 basketball players at Swan that have accomplishments in basketball, including multiple D1 players, pro basketball players. We've got the Compton Magic coming, the top AAU program in the country. So they're coming on Friday morning, doing an exhibition. The Professor is coming, the and one guy that's gotten famous on YouTube. So he's going to be doing some fun stuff at the Magic Money Court. So yeah, there's a little bit of basketball.
Nice. Yeah, sounds interesting. I think if you live near LA or you've always wanted to visit LA, it kind of sounds like a no-brainer. But yeah, I think we'll go ahead and just wrap this up. Cory, thanks for coming on the podcast first, but is there anywhere you want to send the viewers? I know Twitter, LA.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you don't mind, I'd love to just mention in case you have any RAs or FAs watching. I know the Blockworks audience skews a little bit more professional, which is awesome. But yeah, we launched Swan Advisor Services a couple months ago, and it's going great. So this basically helps RAs get Bitcoin into their client portfolios and still be able to, take your fees on it. So if you are a client of a financial advisor and you want to work Bitcoin into your portfolio and have someone help get it into the trusts and retirement accounts and all of that, tell your advisor about it, swan.com/advisor. And then, yeah, otherwise, I guess I don't know that I've done a podcast since we officially closed the acquisition of Spectre. So I just wanted to welcome that amazing team to the Swan family. And it's awesome to see, Moritz and Manolis and Ken chilling in your Slack every day, because I have so much respect for that team and what they've built. So really glad to have them aboard, and I think we're going to build some awesome stuff together. So welcome Spectre.
Nice. Yeah. We didn't mention that. That is a, great point. I think it's any products or services that, enable Bitcoiners to more easily hold their own private keys is, fantastic for the industry. So that was a great decision in my opinion.
Cool. Well, thanks for having me on, Joe. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have to do it again.
All right. Anytime.